and welcome back to Book and Page. We are starting Act 4 of Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale. Now, this video will be looking at Scene 1, 2, and 3. Well, the next two videos will be cutting the very long Act 4, Scene 4 into. So let's go over what happens in these short but telling scenes. So we start Act 4 with Scene 1, which is time, apparently. Yes, time is a character. Time comes out on the stage to tell us time skip. Yeah, you kind of have to do things like this. We might be used to the whole just throw it on the screen thing there, but on stage, we gotta make it a little clearer. Turns out 16 years have gone by, and a few things have happened in the meantime. Notably, Leontis has shut himself away in mourning for the fact that he killed his wife and children. On the other side of things, Polonius has a son that apparently was mentioned before. He finally gets a name. It's Florenzo. And then the baby gets a name. It's Perdita. And Perdita has grown up these 16 years as the daughter of a shepherd, focusing on her coming up. Except not right away. Act 4, Scene 2 focuses on Polonius, King of Bohemia, and Carmillo. You see, Carmillo is thinking about returning to his native Sicily and to his repentant king. Polonius doesn't like that, though. It turns out Carmillo seems to have made himself indispensable, and Polonius wants to keep him around. Useful distraction technique. It turns out he's having problems with his son. He needs some help. And Carmillo says, well, it seems that your son, Florenzo, is attracted to a very pretty shepherd's daughter. And Polonius says, yeah, I've heard that too. Let's disguise ourselves and go spy on them. And then we hit Scene 3. Are we with Perdita yet? No! We're not even with Florenzo. We're with a random dude. His name I'm gonna butcher. It is Autolycus. And Autolycus used to be a servant of Florenzo, till he ruined everything with his gambling and whoring. And now he's a bit of a rogue on the run, looking for the next payday. Who should come along but our good old clown from last scene, who is now considered Perdita's older brother, because they have raised this child. Clown is an awful name. Everybody else gets named. He's just Clown. And he has been sent off with some money to buy some spices for an upcoming sheep shearing feast that Perdita is putting on. Until he gets robbed. Yep. Autolycus, sees this good man and says, I'm going to take advantage of him, pretends to be hurt so that the clown lifts him to his feet and gets pickpocketed, and then says, no, I'm good. You're a great man. I don't need money. I don't need you to walk me anywhere. I am good. You go and do your shopping. It's fine. Yeah, that's... Why don't we talk about the sudden turnaround here? So, we obviously have hit a turning point in the story. I mean, the moment any sort of chorus comes out, I've discussed this previously, especially in, Greek plays, the chorus is there to be your perspective. So it's going to support the people the audience should be supporting, it's going to fill in some holes and information that the audience needs, and sometimes you can subvert this in really interesting ways. The stage directions for the version I'm using denote time to be the chorus. Whether or not there are multiple people here is questionable. It does seem to be a single figure because the figure refers to itself. And it's an absolutely just fascinating discussion. I would love to dig into this one scene in a really academic way. of just how do we do a time skip in a play. Because it really is sort of this fourth wall breaking where the person is coming out and begging the audience to go along with it, right? Like, please, suspend your disbelief. I am time. I'm here to tell you that we're moving forward. And I'm bouncing around. Hey, look, this is Leontis. He's sad because he fucked up. This is Bohemia. They're doing cool. We got Prince. We got Perdita. She's pretty. And over there. Thanks for letting me do that, guys. And, like, disappears. And you're kind of like, okay, that was weird. But necessary. But what I really like about this set of 3 scenes is we are resetting ourselves distinctly. Like, very clearly. And we're resetting ourselves in so many fascinating ways. Like, time showing up here and begging your forgiveness and begging the use of your imagination to understand exactly what's happening here. Just says, hey, this is a play. I'm not actually time. I don't actually have working wings. I can't be in Sicily and Bohemia at the same time. Go with it. Have fun. Enjoy yourselves. And in doing so, allows us to overcome this turning point. Because a lot of changes happen here coming off of Act 3, Scene 3, which was this whole mess of genres and tropes and undercutting all of it. And suddenly we're changing all of it. Because you'll notice we've changed moods. And this should become very apparent when we change seasons. Not only have we in fact skipped forward 16 years, which is necessary for the rest of the story, but we're moving out of the winter into the spring. And we know this because the clown has told us that the feast he's buying spices for is a sheep shearing feast. And this is sort of one of the first things farmers do, farmers like who have sheep, do after the winter season. Like, the sheep are very bulky because they've had their winter fleece. And you get rid of that. We are at a very distinct turning point seasonally for these people. And the fact that we're told about that then draws us into the conclusion that other things are changing as well. If you remember back towards the start of the play, Hermione asks her son, Maximilian, to tell her a story. And he says, do you want a happy story or a sad story? And she says, I would love a happy story, but that choice is up to you. And he says, well, winter's more fit for sad stories. And then we got a sad story. We got the story of Leontis suspecting his wife of horrible things that she's proven innocent of, but takes the punishment anyways. And you'd think that would be the end of the play. No, that seems to be the midpoint. And suddenly we are now in the spring. Well, if winter is set for sad stories, what is the spring meant for? Well, it's got to get happier, right? You're letting go of everything that you've held for this winter. You, too, are like the sheep being shorn of your winter coat. All the heaviness that you've taken from the first part of the play is easing as we head into the second part. And Shakespeare is not just assuming you're going to get it from the sheep shearing reference. Because this entire set of 3 scenes going in to the later half of the play completely rework the focus of the play. Suddenly we have different characters. We have some of the same characters, but they're now in completely different roles. You see, we started with the kings of Sicily and Bohemia as our focus, but they have now aged up into comedic figures. They have now become the funny hijinks moments. The older men who don't quite know what the young folks are doing, so maybe we should dress up and follow them. We're setting ourselves up for a comedy based around these two other figures, this younger son and this younger daughter. Comedies in Shakespeare have been noted for, hijinks, but they're also oftentimes happier love stories that ultimately end with at least one wedding. So when we have this turning point of the older folks who used to be the serious gentlemen becoming jokes, the entire play has changed. And you can see this even in the text of the play itself. It's absolutely fascinating. Most scholars will tell you, now this is not a hard and fast rule, as nothing in Shakespeare ever is, we just established that, but usually we have high-born characters who speak in verse, and low-born characters often speak in prose. Which is to say that we'll have the rhymes, the broken lines, all coming from the high-born characters, while the low-born characters are often going to speak in just batches of text. And this can be pretty hard to spot when you're reading. But take a look at these two pages. So here we have the end of Act 4, Scene 1, which is time. And you'll notice again that we do have the breaks in line. Time is speaking in verse here. But if we go over to Act 4, Scene 2, our first introduction to the King of Bohemia, Polonius, that's prose. There is no line breaks there. He is speaking in just a box of text. In fact, Carmilla follows him. The entire scene is in prose. And this is really played off then by Autoclius in the next scene, starting very obviously in verse, like he's actually singing here. So it's a very obvious verse, which draws attention to the fact that our high-born characters were speaking prose in the last one, and suddenly our low-born character is in verse. We are subverting the very nature of the play on the page. Now, of course, the clown and Autoclius go into prose very quickly after this. But again, that speaks to the fact that Polonius was too. We're suddenly not on the highfalutin tragic area. We are going into a comedy with some low-born characters. It's funny that we meet Autoclius here, who is a rogue that is used to getting beaten up by his marks and is running from the possibility of getting hung, who is named after the father of Odysseus from Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Yeah, he is named after his tragic figure. See, Odysseus' father may or may not have realized his son was coming home from the war. He suffered quite a bit while the son was gone, especially with all the suitors in his daughter-in-law's house. But he was a brave man and a war hero. Then we got the rogue named after him. Yeah. We are actually resetting this entire play in the middle. And that's because this is a play about how things change. It's a play about how the seasons change, how winter inevitably leads into spring, which will admittedly inevitably lead into summer, fall, and winter again. But Autocleitus here says something meaningful. What happens after that point, well, you can't do anything about it, so why worry about it? You gotta focus on living life as you are. A little bit. I mean, don't be Autocleitus and take advantage of the poor guy trying to help you. It's a jerk move. But the sheep shearing festival is coming up. We've got highborn people speaking prose and disguising themselves. We've got a prince in love with a shepherd's daughter that's actually a princess, and it only gets a little more convoluted from there. Yes, we are going into Act 4 with almost a completely different play. Some of the characters are still here, but they've gotten older, and they're no longer the focus of these plays. Now, admittedly, well, Shakespeare could have made this change and still kept a tragedy. If you think about it, something like Hamlet is precisely the younger crowd fighting to take control from the older one. Hamlet is, or should be, rightfully king, but his uncle continues to keep the power. Just like Ophelia would naturally become Hamlet's queen if Hamlet's mother, well, didn't make things worse by marrying her uncle and going along with this entire plan. Sorry, marrying her husband's brother, Hamlet's uncle. So, if Shakespeare wanted to, he could keep this play in the realm of a tragedy. It could become the younger generation fighting against the older generation. It could remain a winter's tale. But Shakespeare, I think, well, he wants to be a little more hopeful than that. Why not throw in the tragedy and the romance and the hope? Doesn't that make the story a little more interesting? Maybe we can save lives rather than keep killing them off. I mean, there is some death. We've already murdered an entire boat of people and had somebody mauled by a bear. But we're here to shear some sheep. And repentance seems to be a possibility. There's just gonna be some wacky moments along the way. So why don't we get disguised, keep on reading. I hope you do too, and I'll see you next time.